swamped. Tropical Storm Isidore comes ashore dumping 2 feet of rain. Massive flooding now in parts of Louisiana and Mississippi. Armed and dangerous. 3 gunmen kill 5 people in a Nebraska bank robbery, then make a daring getaway. But a critical mistake helps police track them down. War on terror. The Bush administration, under pressure, defends its claims of a link between Saddam Hussein and al-Qaeda. Also, details now of al-Qaeda's connection to Iran. And attack plan. More details than we've ever heard about the meticulous planning that went into the 9/11 attacks.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Tom Brokaw.
Good evening. As the political skirmishing over war with Iraq continued in Washington and at the United Nations, in New Orleans and in the American heartland tonight, they are dealing with a ferocious storm and a violent crime. We'll begin with the storm, Isidore, which didn't quite become a hurricane, but it was more than enough for the Gulf Coast and especially for New Orleans. NBC's Robert Hager tonight is in New Orleans, now calm after a wet and windy day. Robert?
Right, you can see how calm is the Mississippi River there behind me, but although it wasn't hurricane strength, it sure did drop a lot of rain, an incredible 2 feet here in New Orleans, and on the coast it brought the highest tide in 20 years. So, states of emergency tonight in Alabama, Mississippi, and here in Louisiana.
All through the long night, driving rain. It came in sheets. It poured from rooftop gutters. It boiled up from flooded drains below, bursting through manholes like geysers in Yellowstone Park. Water piled up in the streets, deeper and deeper. And by first light, residents viewed the full extent of the flooding.
You know, it's frightening when you see water get this high.
We heard a thud. We all jumped up, and our neighbors called about 5 minutes later and said, "Oh, our tree is on your front porch."
On Interstate 10 in New Orleans, an astounding sight. Several cars fully submerged. Behind them, nearly 50 others abandoned when their drivers, caught in the resulting traffic jam, fled, fearing they'd be swept away by the rising water. Nearby, Lake Pontchartrain spilled over its banks, highest people had seen it in years. The remote community of Grand Isle, reeling. In Alabama, gasoline pumps nearly disappeared. A lonely car surrounded by nothing but water. In Mississippi, trees down. While back in New Orleans, Tom Allen ripped up soaked carpeting from his home. Outside, his daughter sat atop what had already been removed.
It was about 3 or 4. I realized the electricity was off. And I got up and started walking around. When I did, I stepped out of the bed in the water.
Tonight, the storms moved on. The city's struggling to return to life. The airport is reopened. But the cleanup will take months. And with rivers swollen in some areas, the flooding may become even worse.
Already tonight, new neighborhoods are being evacuated, and officials say it's way too early to calculate damages, but tonight some believe it could easily run to $1 billion or more. Tom?
Thanks very much, NBC's Robert Hager tonight in New Orleans. Now to the Midwest, northeast Nebraska, the small city of Norfolk, a quiet place best known as Johnny Carson's hometown until tonight. Now it is trying to cope with a violent bank robbery in which 5 people were killed this morning. NBC's Kevin Tibbles is there tonight. Kevin?
Tom, tragedy came here to Norfolk just after the start of business this morning at the local branch of the U.S. Bank. Shortly after the bank opened this morning, armed robbers entered and killed 5 people before fleeing. Local businessman Dale Tomka saw the gunman on the street.
The one had black, like, striped paint on his face.
Police Chief Bill Meisner was one of the first on the scene.
There were 5 individuals who had been shot and killed at this scene. There were 4 who were employees. There was 1 who was a customer.
A 6th person, a woman, was treated for a gunshot wound to the shoulder and released from the hospital. Windows in the bank were shot out. The drive-through window at a nearby Burger King was shattered by a stray bullet. A manhunt was set up with roadblocks statewide. The search for 3 suspects who broke into a nearby house and stole a getaway car, a brand new 2003 white Subaru The vehicle had an OnStar tracking system that police used to find it quickly.
Officers have recovered the vehicle that was used in the getaway. It's currently being processed.
This afternoon, 3 suspects were arrested in O'Neill, Nebraska, about 90 miles away, and are being questioned by authorities. Tonight, as this city remains in shock, 3 men remain in custody, each one facing 5 counts of first-degree murder. Tom?
NBC's Kevin Tibbles tonight. Thanks very much. In Washington and at the UN tonight, the subject is Iraq and terrorism, front and center. Secretary of State Powell told Congress today the U.S. and Great Britain now have settled on a resolution they'll present to other members of the UN Security Council. At the same time, congressional Democrats and President Bush were in their respective corners after a bruising fight yesterday on who best represents the nation's security interests. Here's NBC's Campbell Brown.
The president today, trying to smooth things over with Democrats, pledged the debate over Iraq will not be politicized.
It will be conducted with all civility. It will be conducted in a manner that will make Americans proud.
But Democrats were still seething over the president making his differences with Congress over war and national security a key theme at Republican campaign events.
If this keeps on, then we will lose the atmosphere of trust that is necessary to get the right thing done for the country.
Democrats have also been emboldened because the administration has failed to fully reveal evidence of Saddam Hussein's alleged ties to al-Qaeda. Under pressure to back up its claims, National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice said detainees at Guantanamo are providing new details.
In particular, some high-ranking detainees have said that Iraq provided some training to al-Qaeda in chemical weapons development.
Officials also said today they have intelligence senior al-Qaeda members are operating in Baghdad and that ties between Iraq and al-Qaeda go back 10 years. Some U.S. allies with access to U.S. intelligence dispute the claims. And today, leading Democrats who get classified briefings said this evidence was news to them.
Well, it is a reversal of information the administration shared with us earlier this year.
Even Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld conceded the evidence was not entirely solid.
A lot of different types of sources of varying degrees of reliability.
Administration officials say they are not suggesting Saddam is linked to September 11th, but privately, Democrats say that is exactly what they're trying to do. Campbell Brown, NBC News, with the president in Houston.
And there is more to report tonight on Iran's possible ties to terror. Last night, NBC's Jim Miklaszewski reported exclusively on that part of the terror trial, and he has more details tonight.
Pentagon officials tell NBC News that for the first time in Afghanistan, U.S. Special Forces are now deployed near the border with Iran over growing concerns that al-Qaeda is using Iran for terrorist training. NBC News has learned that U.S. intelligence has detected a suspected al-Qaeda terrorist camp inside Iran near the Afghanistan border. Overhead imagery shows the camp complete with a road course and shooting range, very much like those al-Qaeda camps in Afghanistan destroyed or abandoned in the war. The Iranian government has repeatedly denied harboring al-Qaeda, and today denied NBC reports of a training camp. But Defense Secretary Rumsfeld today claimed the Iranians are lying.
There are al-Qaeda in Iran. There are a lot of al-Qaeda in Iran. Iran is providing haven, and they're telling their people they're not. The government is. And they're not telling their people the truth. And they are there, and they do not like it when we say that. But they are.
U.S. officials believe al-Qaeda terrorists are operating inside Iran with the full knowledge, if not support, of the Iranian military and intelligence. Although small numbers of U.S. troops are now deploying near Iran's border, sources report no apparent plans yet to attack any terrorist sites inside Iran. Iran had pledged its cooperation in efforts to round up al-Qaeda. But tonight, one Pentagon official claims there's far more evidence of al-Qaeda ties with Iran than there is with Iraq. Jim Miklaszewski, NBC News, the Pentagon.
There are new specifics emerging tonight about the meticulous planning that went into the September 11th hijacking. These details come from testimony given to Congress earlier this year by FBI Director Robert Mueller, but not declassified and released until today. Here's NBC's Pete Williams.
3 months before the September 11th attacks, the FBI says, the terrorist hijackers began cross-country flights each of them from the Northeast to California, flights that investigators say were most likely surveillance operations. The first in May from JFK to San Francisco. 2 more in June from Baltimore, Washington to Los Angeles and Boston to San Francisco. Then last August from Dulles to Los Angeles. And each time the FBI says the hijackers booked return flights with 1 or 2 day layovers in Las Vegas. To this day, investigators say the purpose of those layovers remains a mystery. And that's not the only one. When Marwan al-Shehi went to the Miami airport in late August to buy his ticket on the plane he would fly into the Second World Trade Center tower, he was accompanied to the ticket counter by what the FBI calls at least one unidentified Middle Eastern male, a man still unidentified. And investigators still have no idea why hijacker pilot Mohammed Atta took a side trip to Portland, Maine the night before the hijack attacks. Even so, FBI Director Robert Mueller's testimony gives the most detailed accounting yet of the operation. Hijacker Khalid al-Mihdhar, long thought to have been central to the plan, turns out to have been in charge of recruiting what Mueller calls the muscle, the non-pilot hijackers. On September 11th, the hijacker pilots did not, as first thought, sit only in first class. 2 were in business class, 1 in coach. As for the money, the FBI director tells NBC News in a recent interview that the operation cost about $500,000.
We have traced all of that, and the total comes up to somewhere in excess of $500,000.
Aside from Zacarias Moussaoui, who investigators won't discuss, the FBI still says it has found no evidence that the hijackers got help from anyone in the United States who was in on the terror plan. Pete Williams, NBC News, Washington.
In the Middle East, on a crowded street in downtown Gaza today, Israeli helicopter gunships fired rockets at 2 Palestinian cars, killing at least 2 passengers, wounding dozens of bystanders. The 2 killed reportedly were activists in Hamas, Islamic militants who claimed responsibility for last week's deadly suicide bomb on a Tel Aviv bus. But the real target, Mohammed Deif, the chief Hamas bomb maker, was not killed in the attack, only wounded, according to reports. Deif is one of Israel's most feared enemies, believed to be the mastermind behind a string of suicide bombings that have killed at least 100 Israeli civilians over the past 6 years. On Wall Street today, the blue chips extended yesterday's rally. The Dow was up more than 155 points on the day, the second triple-digit gain in a row. NASDAQ finished down a fraction of a point today. Up next, NBC News in depth tonight. New Jersey Senator Robert Torricelli's former friend, now his main accuser, talks publicly from jail about the scandal over gifts. And later, one of the world's scariest bioterror threats. Now scientists are saying it needs much more attention than it has been getting. NBC News in depth tonight. With control of the U.S. Senate hanging on a 1-seat margin, New Jersey has been getting a great deal of attention because Democratic Senator Robert Torricelli has been struggling with a scandal over illegal gifts. Tonight, prosecutors unsealed documents Torricelli has been trying to keep secret, which they say found substantial corroborating evidence to back up allegations Torricelli took illegal cash and gifts. But the senator's main accuser has a record of fraudulent conduct in his career and personal life. That kept him from being used as a witness. But tonight, he is speaking out from prison. In depth now, here's NBC's Lisa Myers.
Once a multimillionaire, businessman David Chang is now a convicted felon in prison for making illegal campaign contributions to this man, Senator Bob Torricelli. In a jailhouse interview with WNBC TV, Chang says the senator belongs in prison too.
My mistake met Robert Torricelli. I don't consider he's a senator. I consider he's a master of a criminal.
Chang was a big Democratic campaign contributor who says he became Torricelli's personal piggy bank, giving him more than $150,000 in gifts and cash over 4 years in exchange for the senator's promise to use his power to help with business deals overseas.
He's not jailed. He's okay. He's a free man. He's a U.S. senator.
Torricelli calls Chang a pathological liar. Until this summer, the senator denied taking any gifts.
There simply were no gifts.
Then, after being severely admonished by the Senate Ethics Committee for taking 3 gifts, Torricelli insisted that was it.
But there were no other gifts.
I couldn't be more categorical.
But new documents and other information suggest the senator may have gotten much more. A $1,500 Persian rug from this store, allegedly picked out by Torricelli, Receipts show it was sent to the senator's ex-wife and paid for by Chang. This antique clock. Torricelli claims he bought it. Chang says he cashed this check for exactly the pre-tax cost of the clock and gave the cash to Torricelli.
Whatever he needs money, he called me.
Chang's message books show frequent calls from Torricelli, and investigators say Chang's checks to cash often corresponded with calls from the senator. That doesn't prove Torricelli got the cash, but an FBI analysis did find that Torricelli spent $22,000 more cash than he withdrew from his personal accounts over 5 years. The senator denied repeated requests for an interview. Today, his spokesman called Chang an admitted perjurer and noted that the Justice Department has declined to prosecute Torricelli. But today, in court documents, prosecutors described Chang as, quote, credible in most material respects. Lisa Myers, NBC News, the Capitol.
Next, the deadliest poison. Is the U.S. prepared for such an attack? As the U.S. inches closer to war with Iraq, a question. What if Saddam Hussein were to unleash an attack on America with nature's most deadly poison, botulism? Is the United States prepared? NBC's chief science correspondent is Robert Bazell.
It comes from bacteria found in soil almost anywhere. The tiniest amounts can kill thousands. A bioterror threat, experts say, needs much more attention.
We're much better prepared than we were a year ago, but we still have more to do.
It is not a hypothetical danger. After the Gulf War, UN weapons inspectors found that Iraq had produced tons of botulism toxins, some of it loaded into missiles and bombs. And Iraq was not alone.
It's known that many countries produced tonnage quantities of it.
For smallpox, there is a vaccine. Anthrax and other bacterial agents can be treated with antibiotics. But botulism is a toxin, a chemical made by bacteria, the most poisonous substance known to humanity.
This is table salt. But if it were pure botulism toxin, aerosolized and evenly dispersed, it would be enough to kill more than 1 million people.
The only treatment for botulism is an antitoxin made from horse serum, and it only works about half the time. After the Gulf War, the Army contracted with this lab to make 5,000 doses for troops. Now the government is beginning a program to get 50,000 more for civilian use, but they will not be available for 2 or 3 years. Another danger, botulism usually causes paralysis for weeks or months, and people can be kept alive only with mechanical respirators, also in limited supply. The government now keeps some respirators among the drugs and equipment stored for emergency responses.
We have sufficient equipment to be able to respond to a small attack.
But if terrorists could manage to distribute a lot of botulism in an aerosol or get the bacteria into milk or other food products, it could lead to a massive outbreak. And for now, we are not prepared. Robert Bazell, NBC News, New York.
Coming up in a moment, why so many famous American brand names suddenly reappeared today in Cuba. What do Mick Jagger and Alan Greenspan have in common? Well, they both have more than a passing familiarity with money. And now, the Federal Reserve Chairman has joined the few and the proud. He was knighted by Queen Elizabeth today in a ceremony at her country estate, Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Greenspan, accompanied by his wife, NBC Chief Foreign Affairs Correspondent Andrea Mitchell, was honored for his contributions to the world's economic stability. And there was a kind of high-level, multilingual farmers market today in an unlikely place, Havana, as in Cuba. As you might expect, Fidel Castro was presiding, but it was his guest list and what they brought that got most of the attention. NBC Jim Avila tonight in Havana.
Fidel Castro, the hemisphere's last ruling communist, swarmed by capitalism in his own country, but at his invitation.
Here you go.
More than 230 U.S. agriculture companies selling famous American brands rarely seen on Cuban shelves today. Castro telling NBC News, food is a national priority.
And the food for the people are sacred. We do not invest in luxurious items.
Havana homemaker Ana Portela shopping today, looking forward to a time when Cuban consumers can regularly buy the American products they remember from 40 years ago, pre-embargo.
I think the best is the Kellogg's cornflakes, and I'd love it with little slices of bananas and so on.
Despite the favorable climate on the Caribbean's largest island, Cuba Cuba is not an efficient food producer and must import $1 billion a year. American farmers, against the wishes of the Bush administration, want to lift the embargo and get more of that business. Ralph Kaler brought his family and a small herd of dairy cows to Cuba from his breeding farm in Minnesota.
You go into these stores and kids say, you know, we don't have enough milk. Tough for me to say now, we shouldn't send that grain down here and we shouldn't help those kids.
Under current law, American farmers can only do business in cash, no credit, limiting sales here to $160 million a year. Cuba paying on time so far, but critics, including the University of Miami's Cuban Institute, warn that Fidel Castro does not pay his bills, owing $40 billion to 20 countries. The U.S. government labeling Castro, quote, a deadbeat and freeloader.
We have not delayed for 1 second our payments to the American exporters.
Farmers from the American heartland and a revolutionary from rural Cuba, strange allies, battling a 4-decade embargo on free trade. Jim Avila, NBC News, Havana.
That's Nightly News for this Thursday. I'm Tom Brokaw, and tonight we say goodbye to a beloved member of the NBC News family.